I'm going to call the meeting to order. I would like to thank everyone in attendance for showing up to the first Police Advisory Board meeting. Such a pleasure to be with such a wonderful team that's committed to do some great work that we're going to be doing moving forward. As Margaret Wheatley once said, there is no power for change greater than a community discovering what it cares about. So before we begin, we'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the events that happened in our nation on Wednesday and recognize that our nation has a lot of healing to do. We are all processing and grieving in our own ways and want to move through this together as a committee and as a community. So if we can take just a moment to pause. Thank you for that. So the first item is to review our agenda and give an opportunity for any changes to the agenda. So at this juncture, what I'm going to do is keep an eye out for anybody with raised hands, or if you would like to unmute yourself and let us know if there are any additions that you would like to have made to the agenda. Okay, we might get done early tonight. So, boy, it's so exciting to see the faces on this screen. I miss many of you in person. So the next part of business is that the biggest goal with today's meeting is to understand why we're here and especially get to know a little bit about the team that's going to be serving on the advisory board. So what I'd love to do is just review our mission statement briefly, go over that. The mission of the Police Advisory Board is to offer advice to the St. Albans Police Department for the successful implementation of the 21st century policing strategies and to assist the police department in following the established roadmap as amended by the City Council. And we did include copies of the roadmap with our agenda today, and bear with me as I admit people in. So to get the introductions going, I thought it would be kind of fun if we could give everybody an opportunity to state first off who you are, and then why did you want to be on this board? So this is directed towards our board of directors. And then what are you hoping to accomplish? So again, the goal is to have you answer those three questions: who you are, why did you want to be on this board, and what are you hoping to accomplish? And once we connect with each board member present, we'll also introduce and meet our chief, Maurice Lamothe. So I'm going to start with calling on people just in the interest of keeping it hopefully organized. And on my upper left, I believe I see Winnie. It's a little bit dark, but Winnie is a member of our board. So I would like to ask you to unmute. And if you would like to share with us, Winnie, on who you are and why did you want to be on this board and what you're hoping to accomplish.
Hey, my name is Winnie Wilkinson, and I want to be on the board because I have experienced systematic racism as well as police brutality. And there's a piece that I believe is missing, that if you don't hear it from someone that's actually going through it for years and have lost people, shot in the back 7 times, only in 2020, then you won't understand the impact of what happens when this happens. Because what I've realized that, you know, hearing people this way speak about it, I never had problems with the police. And I said, because you're right. I have problems with the police. My relatives have problems with the police. So I just want to bring that humanness to this. And it shouldn't be, oh, but I have the police union to back me, so I could do anything and that kind of stuff. So I'm here to bring a voice to the people that don't have the time or don't want to be part of the process. I want to be part of the process so that it could change for my first generation and for anybody else that would like to see the change. What I would like to accomplish is exactly what I just said. Change, and not a change, well, you know, it's the good old boys club or whatever. The union is backing me. No, I mean change. In terms of vetting, if someone we are going in St. Albans going to be wearing a badge and a gun, it's not a privilege, it's an honor. And so you got to be honorable to be able to wear the badge and the gun.
Thank you so much, Winnie. So great to hear from you.
Thank you.
The next person on my screen is Thomas Benton.
Oh, I dreaded being second after that.
Do you want me to repeat the questions?
No,
Okay.
I remember the questions. My answers are just going to be so lame compared to those. So my name is Tom Benton. I wanted to be on the board because I care about the issues, because I don't have any particular agenda I'm trying to fulfill, and because my background is in journalism, and I felt that that fact balancing might be useful to the board.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And the next person I see is Jamie Pinkham.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you, both of you, for sharing those perspectives. I'm Jamie Pinkham, and I have spent my career in healthcare and really wanted to be on this board, one, to help change for this community that I'm a part of and that I love. And I want to support just everybody that we can and making positive change, because obviously there's been an identified need for it, and we need to respond to that as a community, hopefully in a positive and constructive way. And after years of being in healthcare and having experienced some of the, although different, similar challenges, it's really important to me that we can make some of those same changes in law enforcement as we're working on in healthcare, and really with the ultimate goal of caring for our community and making it a safe place to live for everyone.
Sorry, thank you so much, Jamie. And the next person on our board is John Nichols.
Hello, good evening, everybody. I wanted to be a part of this board because as a community member, I have a vested interest in how our police department operates. And I hope that I could bring any perspective and thoughtfulness that I have to this process. I hope, in terms of what I hope to achieve, I will achieve some echo that I'd like to see some positive change that we can agree upon.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, John. And then the next face I see is Miss Chris Lukens. So good to see you.
Good evening. My name is Chris Lukens, and I use the pronoun she, her. And I'm here in my capacity as a resident of St. Albans town, but also as director of Voices Against Violence. Voices works with families impacted by domestic and sexual violence, and the police are a big part of that issue. We work pretty well with the police department, but I think that there's always room for improvement, and I really wanted to be on this board so I could bring the voice of survivors and people from marginalized communities that reach out for services. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Chris. Another member of ours is Danielle Lindley. I don't know that I see. Oh, there she is. Okay, sorry, the last name threw me off.
Yeah, I go in between Lindley and Mitchell. I like to throw people for a loop.
It worked.
Sorry about that. I'll change my name on the screen too. My name is Danielle Lindley Mitchell, And I was interested in joining the board, one, because I've lived here for a while, moved out of state, and have committed to staying in Franklin County. And so raising a family, I want to have a safe community for my family to grow up in. And also, in my professional role, I'm the Director of Children, Youth, and Family Services out of Northwestern Counseling and Support Services. So I see a real opportunity to intervene at different points in families' lives that can be preventative and perhaps prevent law enforcement in different ways. And so overall want to see better health outcomes for our community. And I think that there's some real good systems and policy work that we can do that in the long run will, be better for our community.
Thank you so much, Danielle. And my name is Melinda White. I am here as a resident of St. Albans for almost my entire life, minus about 1.5 years of going to treatment in another state, which brings me to the second piece, is that I am a person in long-term recovery. So I had a large interest in being part of this team because I've had experience being on both sides of the law, being on the side of the law that was getting arrested more than I'll care to admit with this group. And at the same time, in my position now, working with people who are struggling with substance use disorder, currently with the Phoenix House of New England, and working to assist individuals who are sometimes intervened with law enforcement. I've been building partnerships with law enforcement so we can better support and serve. I love Danielle's answer because that's so similar too, is that how can we get healthier outcomes in our community? So I have a huge vested interest in working together with people like you in our community to find solutions. And that's a huge piece of what drives me personally and professionally, is that it's often easy to see the problems. And I don't think that seems to be a big issue these days, but what seems to be more of a challenge at times because of stress and frustration can be putting more effort in this different solutions than we do on the problem. And I feel that the more we focus on solutions, the larger they get. And likewise, if we focus on problems too much, those grow as well. So my goal is to hopefully bring some solution and ideas and partnership to make our community a better, safer place. So that was my 2 to 3 minutes. So that's our board of directors. And now I'd love to introduce Chief Lamothe. I'm so grateful that you're joining us and would love to hear a little bit from you.
Yes, ma'am. How are you?
Wonderful. How are you?
I'm good. So my name is Maurice Lamothe. I know a couple of the names on here, Chris Lukens from prior work. I know Melinda from prior work, Peter Delory, who I don't see on here, but I know him. A lot of your names are actually familiar to me, but I just haven't actually worked with you. I'm excited to be here. I'm very excited to be the chief. I have a long history in Franklin County, coming from the state police of over 20 years. Quite honestly, my expertise with everything I've done in the law enforcement world is bringing people together. That's kind of where I excel. Not to gloat or speak highly of myself, but that's where I do well. I'm not an expert in anything, nothing, as a matter of fact. But what I do well is just that, as I look for outside resources and bring them in, which is how I became familiar with Melinda and utilizing her skills, and NCSS and utilizing their skills with our embedded crisis worker. And that's what I see in this panel and with you. I look forward to this partnership and this collaboration. Police are very good at reactive work. We're pretty good at proactive work as well, but when it comes to working with the community and coming up with ideas and solutions for interworkings and problem solving within community relationships, reactive work doesn't work. It has to be proactive. The only way we're gonna get that is with boots on the ground. Boots on the ground doesn't mean police officers, because we have a skewed view in the aspect that we don't have the training that allows us to get the real feelings on the ground. We're not there in that world every day. When we do get called to things, it's in a different capacity. We need people that are dealing with things from a different point of view that we just don't have that experience. So when I say boots on the ground, that's what I'm relying on for you and people that to get the message to me and my people, and my people being people I can talk to every day at work, because I'm with them every single day. And together we can get the message down, what needs to change and how we can change it. And what I told Melinda this week is I don't want to be the person on this panel that's here every day or every meeting if it hinders what you're doing. But I don't want to be on the panel only once a year either. I want to be as involved as you allow me to be, because it doesn't mean no good to hear about things 3 months after it happened. I want to be as involved as you allow. Just keep me posted. Every meeting is good. Every other meeting, whatever you want. But the only way it's going to work is if we work together. But I'm excited to do it. I've talked to a lot of chiefs in the state that don't do it. Talked to a lot of chiefs in the state that do. And the majority that do it absolutely get a lot of benefit out of these type of groups. So let's go.
Awesome. I love the energy. I'm super excited for this. So moving right along on our agenda, I'm like pleasantly surprised we're running a little bit ahead even. What I did include was reviewing the police transformation roadmap. And what I would love to do, I believe I have the ability to, is share it on my screen. And this is something that is posted on the City of St. Albans website. It's also something that I have been trying to read and reread as much as possible to get familiar with, and just wanted to go through it. And I appreciate your patience in doing so. The City of St. Albans is committed to transforming its police department and building community trust in the wake of multiple excessive force incidents. We believe the most efficient and effective way to achieve this is to adopt the principles and practices of 21st century policing and retain national experts to assist our department with timely implementation. We also recognize the need for more training and education in all city departments and boards to better understand our implicit biases and the experience of non-majority communities. Police department leaders will join other department heads in this initiative. So when we look at this, to this end, the city supports the following values. The first value is strike the proper balance between guardian and warrior roles of our police officers. Most of the time, police officers will be called to act as a guardian and community service officer, responding to those in need. Our organizational culture, recruitment materials, and training efforts should reflect this vision of the role of a police officer. The second value is to embrace community engagement. Community engagement is a policing philosophy that should be embedded into the culture of the department. The commitment to work with community members to tackle the immediate and longer-term causes of crime or other issues requiring police intervention through joint problem solving reduces crime and improves quality of life. The third is to ensure fair and impartial policing through procedural justice principles. Procedural justice is based on 4 principles. 1 is treating people with dignity and respect. 2 is giving individuals voice during encounters. 3 is being neutral and transparent in decision making. And 4 is conveying trustworthy motives. The fourth we look at is building community capital. Trust and legitimacy grow from positive interactions based on more than just enforcement interactions. Law enforcement agencies can achieve trust and legitimacy by establishing a positive presence at community activities and events, participating in proactive problem solving, and ensuring that communities have a voice and seat at the table working with officers. Our fifth is pay attention to officer wellness and safety. Law enforcement officers face all kinds of threats and stresses that have a direct impact on their safety and well-being. Ensure that officers have access to the tools that will keep them safe and promote officer wellness through physical, social, and mental health support. And then finally, recruit, hire, and select the best officers possible. We recognize the need to select, hire, and train officers that reflect the values of the department and the community it serves. The city will also seek to cultivate racial and economic diversity within the police department. So I just wanted to go over that piece. I encourage people to look at the city website and continue to read on. But at this portion of our agenda, we wanted to talk about the transformation roadmap and also to solicit any ideas that people might have for this group moving forward, things that you would like to see, ways that we can align with what the roadmaps tells us. So I would encourage people to either raise your hand if you have the ability to do that, through whether it be through the Zoom account, or to unmute yourself and start speaking. I'm just hoping that people don't unmute too quickly and start speaking, so we'll start with a hand raising, but this is really an opportunity for us to hear your voices. Okay, I see a hand to the upper. Well, okay, so public comment is going to be at the end of the meeting. I do see somebody that isn't identified as a board member. Please don't go anywhere because we're opening the floor at the end.
Melinda, it's Jamie. I seem to have lost my raise my hand function, so I apologize. This is not my normal computer, so I'm a little bit of a fish out of water. But one of the things as you worked through that roadmap that I am hopeful for is that we really use data at this board in a way to help us achieve those goals. Absolutely want to hear the personal stories that folks have to share, and I think they're important. But there is definitely a balance to be struck between the individual stories and data over time, and that would be really how we would work with Mo and the police team to help guide them in their priorities and things that we would like to see improve over time is by using that data in a way that drives improvement. And I think you can use data in a number of those areas on the roadmap to really help guide and support the police and the community in those improvements.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Jamie. There was one thought that I had noted for this board too. Oh, wait, is that a hand, Winnie?
Yeah.
Yes, Winnie. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. One thing that I want to bring to that struck me when I read the whole roadmap is that I am a sole believer, and I want to use one case that happened in St. Albans that we should really look at. The woman that was arrested with her handcuffs, she was handcuffed in a cell. We cried, that's what women do. And she was, beaten like that. And not only that, is that person left and was right down the road and was hired by the sheriff's office. Now, what I want to, the piece that I want, and that I would be my pet piece, my term on this, is that before a person is arrested, there should be the emotional status of that person should be a factor. A person with a drug problem should not have an arrest record. Instead, they should be treated. Take them to the tank. Well, I don't know if they call it a tank here. I know in Atlanta they call it a tank. They shouldn't go to jail. They should be like in that area. They shouldn't have an arrest record because they have a sickness, an illness. So before we get in the community and the cops and whatever together, part of the roadmap, that should be distinctly clear, crystal clear. So what is a policy or procedure that we're going to get to that, where there's more social interaction, social workers interaction, more mental health, more drug counselors interaction before a person's arrested and have a record and got to be show up in court. Before we should treat them, before all of that. I'm done.
Thank you, Winnie. I appreciate that. I see Danielle's hand up.
I wonder, Winnie, you have some interesting points in there. So it made me think about kind of what, from the law enforcement point of view, is working well right now. And I do think that should be informed by data, but are there existing partnerships? I can speak from NCSS. I know that there's experience in that partnership that is working well, but also what are the community resources? Because I don't think this is just about law enforcement doing community policing. I think this is about the community coming together and doing an evaluation of kind of what do we need as a collective community for us to be safe. So I'm just curious if there's a way to kind of roadmap, again, what's working well, what are the existing partnerships, resources, and are there gaps that in order for us collectively to have a safe community that we need to identify?
Beautiful. Thank you for that, Danielle. Any other hand? Yeah, go ahead.
I'll just offer too, part of why I was interested in this is I'm also a results-based accountability trainer, RBA. And so I'm happy to bring some of that to help facilitate through moving through these types of processes.
Thank you, Danielle. I'm so grateful that you mentioned that too, because I do know that's going to be a piece of what we're going to focus on moving forward, is that for this board, we are all going to need more training and awareness and guidance on what is going on, what changes can we do, a gap analysis, and it's hard to do a gap analysis when we aren't totally clear on what current processes or resources are available. So I love that you highlighted that, especially that you could potentially be one of our trainers in an upcoming board meeting to help shed light on what is results-based accountability. What does that look like? How is it measured? So I'm super grateful that you mentioned that. I see John Nichols's hand up.
Yeah, thank you. My comment regarding the roadmap refers to something that I see that's maybe missing a little bit, or maybe if it's not, maybe I can be pointed to where it is. But I don't see, I don't, speaking of accountability, I don't see really much transparency around accountability for the police department. And it's important, especially as we relate to that fourth bullet point with building trust, because positive interactions certainly can be part of how we build trust. But whenever you're talking about trust in an institution, I think accountability and transparency really have to be baked into that, or else, we may be kind of just getting a small portion of what really needs to happen to achieve that.
Thank you, John.
Melinda, and maybe Mo can jump in here too. I know I was part of the city council meeting where it may not be all the transparency you're referring to, John, and I'm not suggesting that it is, but you brought forward your complaint policy, Mo, and I don't know if that got approved or got enacted, but I think one of the components of that was making sure that if nothing else, the data was going to be transparent from those complaints, and there would be some built-in accountabilities around that. Is that still the case, or is that something you're still working on?
So both answers. That is our internal affairs policy that was adopted. I think it probably went through in like October when it was finally signed off on, but it is adopted. So what that stipulates in there is that yearly there will be the stats, for lack of a better term, or data will go out, and it'll indicate what we had for complaints, both internal and external. You generate complaints against officers, and kind of the 5 different ways in which they were categorized, whether they're substantiated or not. So it also allowed for more often to be released, but it's being compiled right now for the year end of 2020. So that'll be going to the city council soon. Probably won't make it for Monday's meeting, but it'll be there for February's meeting. But it's also gonna be posted on the city website, at the PD, and at City Hall. But again, it can come out. I intend to do it more than yearly. I intend to do it honestly quite often, like just quarterly, just because it's there. What difference does it make whether we do it quarterly or yearly? I'd rather do it more often and answer questions then. We're actually looking at doing more than just that. We're going to start posting. I think we're going to get to the point where we post our car stop stats. Just our general arrest, everything. More of our stats more commonly, more often. We do it yearly anyway, again, so it's just as easy for us to do it at least quarterly. And we're talking about doing a majority of our stats that way, where people can just go on our website and it's all there. It just makes more sense. It's coming out at the end of the year. It's just as easy to keep up with it. And it will add for some accountability and some transparency.
So I'm wondering if that's something that we can leverage at this committee at whatever frequency. I think we meet monthly, and I appreciate that monthly data is not always as effective as you might think it is, but I'm just wondering if you're building those tools anyway, if that is something that we can leverage at this committee.
Right. We spent a considerable amount of time in the last few months building some ways to track this stuff a little easier. But quite honestly, I mean, you're not talking large numbers. So monthly, you might be like, geez, nothing changed. And that's a good thing when it comes to complaints, but other things do change rapidly, like case numbers and arrests and tickets and warnings. So, but yeah, we can build it in any way you'd like. It makes no more work for us to do it. We compile stats. That's part of the thing we do every single day. So it's not a problem. I'm open to any suggestions. We certainly want to get it out there for everybody to see what we do. It shows that we're doing something and we're keeping track of everything. So it's fine. Not a problem. And it's part of the community involvement, and yeah, we're welcome to do it.
Thank you.
Mo, I wanted to ask you too, because I know that I'm aware of the answer to this, but I'd love to make sure everybody on this team is. But when we look at community involvement, so can you tell us some of the events, such as National Night Out, Coffee with a Cop, that kind of thing, that some of the events that you see on the scope? And I know the COVID makes this a challenge, but just to be able to touch on that, because you guys are doing, even when we look at on Wednesdays, some of the outreach that's being done. So I didn't know if you wanted to just kind of share a little bit of that with the people in attendance.
Yeah, so as you just mentioned, COVID is hindered us dramatically. We canceled National Night Out nationally. It canceled, but we've done as many events as if we've been, anything that gets tossed our way, we do, from the constant birthday parades, which we're doing those at least weekly, to the birthday parades, retirement parades, we've done for daycares, you name it, to Coffee with a Cop, but even that we're slowed down considerably because it's just not safe to gather. We've done everything we can to be at games, which has now been put on the back burner as well, and events for schools. We'll show up at anything. But the biggest thing we're doing now as a group is doing the community support unit that you just mentioned. So every Wednesday is the day we're out there, and I guess for lack of a better term, in force, because we have 3 officers that are committed to it all day Wednesday. But even during the week, we're spending time doing it. But on that Wednesday, they're in the community somewhere, whether it's primarily we're concentrating on the homeless encampments right now. And when I say encampments, that includes the hotels that are being utilized for homeless, but they're also in the actual encampments as well. They're at Martha's Kitchen. They're out wherever we think that there's marginalized community members that could use some assistance with the way to contact people, resource materials that we can give them. We've had pamphlets made up. We're getting out your card now for Phoenix House. We went through 1,000 of them in about a month and a half, which doesn't mean we've met 1,000 different people. It just means they're asking constantly, and it's good stuff. People are talking to us more, and we're showing up at these places, which was the goal in this. Our police officers are dressed down when they're going, so people hopefully realize that we're not there because of a call to service. We're there because we're there. We're just stopping in. We're getting good praise from it, from what I've heard. And then when that's not going on, they're just walking on the street, talking to people, and just way to get out. But again, COVID has made it a little difficult. But we're open. As one of the things I was going to bring up in this meeting at some point, if any of you think of something, and I don't care what it is, how small, big, that you think we can be a part of, call us. We'll do it. I can't think of anything we've said no to. We'll send people if we have the people. We'll send them. It's as long as it's in our community or thereabouts in our community. We've sent them out of our area a little bit. But city council, they're not gonna be happy if we're in Enosburg every day. But for the most part, we'll send people places to be part of the community.
Awesome. Thank you, Mo. Yeah, I was hoping too, and you spoke on it, is that on those Wednesdays, I guess just something that I see that was a great opportunity and has been fulfilled is the HRPs, which are known as harm reduction packs. Mm-hmm. So we get those from the health department, and they've got everything from naloxone to gloves to lip balm, and lots of education and resources and referral information. And I was having to head to a different location and dropped off a humongous box to SAPD approximately 2 weeks ago. And when I was contacted by one of your amazing staff, they had been distributed to individuals struggling with homelessness that are placed in the hotels and in the shelters and at Martha's Kitchen. So I'm super appreciative for that. It's been a challenge for all service providers as far as COVID goes, and to have individuals that are willing to go boots on the ground and connect with people who have sadly been placed in hotels, some of them since March, and it's a real challenge. Chris Lukens is part of our community housing response team that meets regularly, and getting people to show up face to face and provide services and support to the individuals that are placed in the hotels has been humongous in them being able to cope and move forward. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's worked out really well. I mean, we have had very little pushback. NCSS has been phenomenal in this venture with their support.
Yeah. Great. I want to do less of me and more of you. So any other hands that would like to come up? And I hate to call someone out, but I'd love to ask Chris just to give a little bit of an example of what her experience has been working with law enforcement, because I know that she definitely has. Would you be comfortable sharing that, Chris?
Sure. Well, we've had a long history of working with law enforcement. And we currently have a project with St. Albans Police Department, soon to be expanded to all the other departments in the two-county area. And it's called the LAP, which is the Lethality Assessment Program. And what that is research has shown us that a lot of people that are at higher risk of domestic assault, sexual assault, and stalking are less likely to reach out to services for assistance. So oftentimes people don't know that our program exists. So if a police officer goes to the scene of a domestic and they assess the risk level, there's a sheet, there's a, like, not a questionnaire, but questions that the officer looks at and asks those questions, checks off, and if they score a certain level, then it triggers the officer to call our program and connect the survivor with an advocate on the scene. That's been working really well. We started that in January, and I think that has really progressed well, and I'm looking forward to expanding that to other law enforcement areas. And what we're finding is that those people that are being referred to us are often not on anybody's radar. And that they have not been able to reach out. And you add COVID into all that, it really complicates things because people aren't able to, you know, make a phone call or, you know, get out. You know, they're kind of isolated. So I think that project has worked really well, and there's a big training piece that goes with that. But I think what we have learned over the years is that training has to be done all the time. It's not a one-time thing that you just train officers and they're going to remember everything and everything's going to be great. New information, we have to have these ongoing conversations about what works, what doesn't. There's a lot of survivors that don't want to reach out to law enforcement. They've had bad experiences or they don't know what's going to happen. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And I think, people, survivors have been arrested. We've had a number of those cases. We've had, we had to really have some difficult conversations with law enforcement around that. So there's really a lot of learning that needs to happen, but I gotta say that we really have had a great relationship with SAPD. We have one of our collaborative grants also allows us to have St. Albans Police Department officer as a detective investigator for domestic violence cases, and he works out of the state's attorney's office. We've had that Sean in that position for a lot of years, and it's amazing how that has really helped with the relationship with police departments, but also with survivors in general. So we've got that part of the work that we've been doing has been really good. But I also like to look at ways that we can work with officers and work with the police department to not necessarily have that police response all the time. There's other avenues and there's other resources that we can tap into to help survivors. Not everybody wants to call the police. Not everybody, they've had bad experiences with the police, for instance, or whatever, or they don't want to get their partner in trouble. So there's, I'm hoping that we can, as time goes on, that we can explore other options and other ways that we can partner with police to look at domestic violence differently. Yet, yes, there is a lethality component to that work, but it's also a lot of, you know, I guess situations where I think we can rely on other resources to help out. So in a nutshell, that's a little bit about what we've been doing as of late.
Thank you, Chris. Something that keeps popping to mind too with the resources and trying to do a gap analysis popping up is that the messenger had put out a resource guide, and this was a 2020 resource guide, so I'm sure that there have been some changes, but I found as a service provider in this community that of all of the various guides that I've ever seen, this was by far one of the most amazing, specific to our county, our community. So I'm wondering if moving forward, what I'll do is send a link to our board members. I know that Chief Mo has already seen it. I have dropped off many copies to them, to our community members. But I feel like that would be maybe a great starting point for us to identify who are the providers in our community, and also to identify the individuals working for said agencies. So when we do start looking into growing some partnerships, we'll have a starting point. And at the same time, if we do start identifying gaps, that's where we can hopefully get creative and find ways as a community to slowly start filling those gaps. When we did our community addiction workshop, a big reason that we were presenting that to the community is that we know that, you know, substance use is a huge hole. And there's, you know, we can't as a community wait for the state or the feds to come and fill the hole and provide everything we need. We as a community need to grab a shovel and just put in one shovel load, maybe one more shovel load, and find ways, especially when we find those gaps, on how can we creatively be proactive and start finding solution. And when, you know, instead of waiting and hoping that somebody will come along. So I think that's something that I'll take as a homework assignment to myself, is to email our board the link, the electronic link. And those copies are also available through the St. Albans Messenger in hard copy for anyone interested. But that might be a good starting point to identify what we have in our community for service providers and nonprofits. Were there any? I had one more idea, but I really would love to hear more voices besides mine. Okay, so I guess I'll just go with my other idea, and this is completely open for discussion. This came to me the other day, but a thought that I was having with this team moving forward is that the board that we have is going to remain as is for a minimum of a year. So we can't take on new board members. However, I had this light bulb moment that it could be helpful to our group to have access to somebody with law enforcement experience who is retired. And the reason I come up with that, because we have Mo, who's extremely knowledgeable. That being said, what was popping through my mind was that Mo answers to the mayor and the city council, and he's bound by certain law enforcement rules and regarding, especially with investigations. And we may have questions, more broad questions that would create a conflict of interest of asking him. So local and federal investigations may prevent open communication. And my thought was, if we were to have a resource of a retired law enforcement officer that could provide perspective as needed, that might be a helpful resource to this team. So I just wanted to bounce that off you and see how you felt about it. If it's subject matter that having an expert available to answer questions where the person can speak openly, to help us who are not law enforcement officers get a little bit of history or an idea of how things may typically work without possibly putting Chief Mo in a position that he wouldn't be able to guide us as much as he may want to. So that was a thought that I had, but I'd love to hear from each of our board members on if it sounds like a nice idea to assist us, or if it feels like it's not a good idea. And it's not something that has to necessarily be decided on tonight. We could bring it up at the next meeting and possibly take a vote, but I don't want to even think that far if anybody feels like, no, don't like it.
I think it's perfect.
Thank you, Winnie.
I'm not sure that I entirely understand the idea. Is there like a situational example that you might be able to offer?
I guess the best examples that there's not a situational one per se. I do have one in mind. So, and there's a there was an arrest that was made, and when asking the officer questions that would have helped give more transparency, the officer was not able to give more information because there was an ongoing investigation. So if something like that was to potentially pop up in the future for us, where we would like to dig and ask questions about this, you know, this situation just happened, can you tell us why did it happen this way? Why did you go, like, just to get some background. So the thought that I had was, if it's somebody who's a retired law enforcement officer from the community, that person isn't bound by, they're no longer active. Right. So they can give us at least, again, it would be not situational, sorry, but they could at least give us some guidance and answers that can't be given by current staff. So that was the thought I had. And again, this wouldn't be a new board member per se. The only thing that would look different about this is that as we continue to hold our board meetings, we're going to have time allotted in the very beginning for the first few minutes for public to share, because we want to hear the voice of the public. So in the very beginning, we offer that opportunity today. If anybody wanted to add anything to the agenda, then at the end of the agenda, again, public can comment. The board does business in between. So the only difference would be that this individual would have the opportunity to speak along with the board members if asked a question, but otherwise, if not asked, they wouldn't need to share anything. Their presence attending the meetings would be helpful to them, I would assume, because they would have a feel of who the group is, how we function, how we move forward. So I was looking at it more so as a guide, and I guess it's for me personally that it would be helpful to have somebody with that law enforcement experience that we can ask any questions to without any fear of them not being able to be as forthcoming as they want to be because of ongoing investigations, things related to maybe CIs, or, you know what I mean? So that was kind of where my brain was going with this the other day.
Thank you. That's clear.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, no, it was.
Melinda, I think that's a good idea if we can find that resource and it works. Absolutely. The last comment that you just made sort of triggers into the number 8 on our agenda a little bit, and just that last public comment, and really making sure that that's a safe space for people to be able to share their stories with us as the oversight board. And so, you know, it would probably need to be in the absence of active police. Just in my experience in healthcare and other places, you know, it's easier sometimes to speak your truth when you don't have fear of the person on the other end of that. And so we would certainly want people to be able to share their stories with us so that we can help guide either the data we're collecting or provide Mo and the police guidance. And it's really hard to do if people are afraid to speak in that space. And understandably, if they've had a negative experience, we would want to create a safe space for them to share with us at the end of our meetings those concerns. And having that person available to us would allow us to maybe leverage them to ask specific questions about somebody's story so that we can help make improvements so that people don't have those experiences again.
Thank you so much for that, Jamie.
I think it's a great idea. I think it will help fill a gap of, you know, some of the resources and expertise that we just won't have on the team. And so I'm in favor of that.
Thank you, Danielle. What are your thoughts, John?
Oh, that sounds fine to me, especially in the context that Jamie mentioned. I think that's a very good point.
Great, so I'll take that as an action item onto myself as well, and we'll communicate with the board between now and the next meeting with thoughts of if we can identify a who, and at the same time, if any of you have ideas of anybody that you can think of that you feel would be a good fit to reach out to, let's communicate between meetings, and then hopefully by our next meeting we can solidify that person, the idea of that person. And I appreciate that Jamie did bring up about moving forward when we do go to the public comment portion, that if people are not comfortable with law enforcement presence, that would be a good time to say a thank you and goodbye for today type of thing, so people can be comfortable, because that's the goal of our team, is for all voices to be heard. And on that, mentioning that, I also want to just let everybody know that in the chat at the very beginning of the meeting, I did put an email address in the chat. We have a time limit, which we've done well so far today. That's great. But there could potentially be a scenario down the road that we are sharing and talking and run out of time, and I don't want anybody to feel like their voice is not valuable. So if somebody is sharing, that if we run out of time, the email address to reach us is pab@stalbansvt.com. So that is in the chat if you look in the chat. And anybody who would like to send information, comments, or if there's somebody starting to share on something when we run out of time, please complete your thought that you wanted to get out, because every voice is valuable at this table.
And I should have introduced myself in this way at the beginning. I think the Zoom sort of threw me off because it's different than my setup in my other office, but I'm acting as the co-chair for this committee. And so part of my work to support Melinda will be to serve in a timekeeper function. So if we haven't had that tonight because we've had some extra time and this has been great conversation, but there may be points where I will politely let people know that they're coming to their time, and in the same way that Melinda did guide them to the email address. So please don't take it personally if I start to interrupt in the middle of your speaking. Is not the goal, but we do want to keep us focused and on time and allow everyone a chance to speak.
Melinda, what is that email address again? I don't see it in the chat.
Yes, so it's, okay, sorry about that. I will put it again. It's PAB for Police Advisory Board. So PAB as in boy at stalbansvt.com.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. And we still have time for more thoughts and ideas relating to the roadmap. Maybe a couple more action items would be great. And maybe something to think about is for our next meeting, is there a specific training that we should focus on that people are interested in? I know that we're going to have trainings we're going to want. I'd love to hear from you all on what you feel the top priority is.
The accountability training that Danielle mentioned sounds pretty good. I don't know how you feel about doing that at our next meeting, but that one I think sort of sounded like a perfect backdrop for the work that we're trying to do at this committee, from my perspective.
Yeah, I'm happy to put something together. I would need to work with Jamie and Melinda on just the amount of time, because depending on what you're hoping to get out of it, you know, you can talk about RBA for a while if you wanted to, but I'm assuming that we want to keep it pretty time limited. I'm also sitting with is that I'm kind of having a difficult time answering some of the questions, just because I really don't, I'm not aware of all of the data. And so for me, I'm really feeling like I need the data to be able to say, like, if we have a roadmap, like, how are we developing priorities? Because I don't know where that information sits. And so for me, as a board member, it'd be really helpful in a few of the upcoming meetings to be able to look through that.
Yep.
Okay, so that could be another action item. Is that, Mo, how do you feel about bringing some data to us next week that would help paint a picture of what's going on in the community?
You know, our systems are designed to do nothing but spew data. So you tell me what you want for data, and honestly, to be honest with you, I'm not the one to do that, but I get it. I can get data. So you tell me what you want for data, and I can get data. So depending on what you're looking for, I'm capable of getting most anything. It just depends what you want.
I don't want to lose sight of Winnie's earlier comment, and I don't know if there's any data that we can, you know, circle around that related. And as a privacy officer, I understand the sensitivity of it all, but, you know, if there's anything around addiction or mental health related arrests that we could look at, if that's data that you can even pull, and it may not be. I'm just
Sorry, I
curious.
don't mean to interrupt, but that one is a problem. And the reason I say that, that's been an issue now for my entire career. It's getting better. There's two different systems. There's a system when I was at state police that before I got done, they just added a mental health component that was very subjective. Do you think the person was in a mental health crisis at the time of the incident? That just got added in the last couple of years when I was there. The system I'm on now in the St. Albans Police Department, which is a totally different record system, also has a mental health component, but that's also just got added. So I can get you that data, but I can tell you that, and I have no problem doing it, but it's still a subjective data. It more relies on the officer. Do you believe this was mental health related? The garbage in, garbage out. I hate to say that, but that's kind of what that is. There are clear cases where it's mental health related, but that's going to be the ones where we are called for a welfare check because person A said that person B was talking about suicide or attempted suicide. But other than that, that is clear cut as that one is. Most of them are not that clear cut, so they're way underreported, hugely underreported.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's a place to start. I mean, I get the garbage in, garbage out, but
it's been a nightmare because working with NCSS and that embedded crisis worker, I've testified in legislature more than 50 times trying to get more money for this program across the state for 5 years, and legislature always wanted data. So we've tried to build a way to get better data, but the problem always became who thought what was mental health related versus who didn't. People were always afraid to push that button, always afraid to give somebody that stigma, for lack of better term. So unless it was very, very cut and dry, and that's what it was, it never got used. And so unless you had the right supervisor or the right trooper or the right officer, it was way underreported. So I can certainly pull it, but I don't think you're going to see an uptick. When you're going to see an uptick in our office right now is when we get our new mental health embedded crisis worker who's going to start at the end of January. You're going to see it because she's going to be on the ground and she's going to push for that to be used. Same thing happened in state police when Nick started from MCSS. It got used, but it's not accurate. It's not accurate. It's just because they recognize it better.
Can I say something about that?
What's that?
Can I say something about that? It's actually one reason why I really wanted to join the board is because I really appreciate the work that Nick and the embedded social workers have done. And I think an area to build upon is that, and this is just me in my position and not in behavioral health or adult services, is that I would love to see some of that work of the embedded social worker really be expanded to a family approach, because I feel like we can that's where the prevention comes in. If there are children involved or if there are other family members or neighbors, like how do you pull them in a different way to get them into the system earlier versus that's already at a crisis point and we're, trying to engage in mental health services. So I just want to kind of point it out because I do think that the program has been phenomenal and
That's
a
awesome.
lot of great outcomes. And so that's really something that I'm passionate about is expanding of how do you get those involved into the system earlier so that in the long run, hopefully we can intervene earlier and not, and again, have better health outcomes long-term.
So
I agree with that. Yeah.
I could go down this road all day of how that does help get them there, but unfortunately we need that and still need that initial contact for it to work
Right.
in my world. But maybe this program, maybe this team will come up with a different idea, but it has helped get families in because once we're through that door that first time, Nick, I can speak of Nick because I worked hand in hand with him for 4 years. He was able to do those follow-up plans that never existed before. But again, I could talk that world all day because that's been my own, but hopefully we can do stuff with that with this team.
And one thing I want to point out is that a police officer isn't trained as a mental health worker. So the police officer asking that question, I believe, is out of zone. He or she is out their zone. That should be the mental health, the social worker, and the drug counselors. Those are the questions that those people should be asking, not the police officer.
I agree, which comes back to funding, and we're going to be very lucky that we are going to have another embedded crisis worker, but unfortunately, there's very few and far between in the state of Vermont. There should be one on every shift.
Exactly. Well, in my opinion, again, I believe that from what I heard or what I was told, if I'm incorrect, please correct me, that 80 to 85% of the budget in St. Albans goes to the police. we need to trim that back, and so it could go to the social worker, the mental health worker, and the drug counselor.
I could talk budget with you all day. It is a large part of the budget. We don't even, right now, like I said, we're lucky that we're going to have one embedded crisis worker. Again, I would like to have one on every shift, but that's it. The state is the one that we're trying to get money out of to help assist with this. But right now, all we have is one, and we don't even have that person yet. Oh, I just lost somebody. Winnie?
Oh, I think we lost her.
Yeah, we did.
Okay, yeah, we just lost her video. She's good.
Yeah, but one thing I want to say to you is that a place in Atlanta called Park Lake, what they did, instead of having this person on the city payroll, they have them like accountants, they're contractors. So they come like, you know, like an accountant, they work in as a private contractor. And so they have these cases and they work these cases. So having someone sitting there on payroll is not feasible. However, if you have them on contracts, they have to have the qualification, obviously, and they are contracts, so they work per case. And I've seen it work in Park Lake in Atlanta. And again, it's the same situation like St. Albans, that it was so similar that I have to ask some people, why don't you guys look at this and see how they made the change? So if you sit here and said, oh no, the budget, and we could, no. There are things in the budget that we should now divert to different areas, because it's extremely important that someone with a mental situation, a drug situation, and should not be arrested and be part of the system. We gotta stop that.
It is definitely an ongoing issue, and I can say that we've done a lot with the mental health worker we have now, but there's still more work to be done. Or the mental worker I've had in the past, I should say.
And I think on that note too, I think one thing that's helpful, I know I've worked with you and Nick when you were with VSP, and also closely with other, with a crisis worker that was embedded with St. Albans Police as well as VSP. And that was something that we also acknowledged, that in addition to a crisis worker to address mental health issues, there's also a need for substance use treatment as well. So I know that we've done a pilot together for some years now, and it has worked beautifully, and we have collected data, and that's something that I can at least speak on behalf of Phoenix House in New England, who has adopted approximately 400 of the patients that were historically with Northwestern Medical Center's Hope and Recovery Clinic. So when that clinic was sadly unable to continue under NMC, the majority of the team, so the 3 providers that we had, in addition to a couple of nurses, and then eventually myself, went to work for the Phoenix House of New England. So Phoenix House is serving over 400 patients in Franklin, Grand Isle County. And I have gotten permission, our CEO and president, Pete Muma, has met with Chief Lamothe and I to give the green light to continue doing that work together. Again, what we find is the lack of resources, that as much as I wish I could be placed right at SAPD, because I do think there's a need for a worker available 24/7 for both mental health and substance use, that, you know, it's something that we as a community know is a need, and we want to continue to seek out. There was a federal grant, a rural HRSA grant, which Chris Lukens is familiar with as well. And a huge portion of that, when we filed for the implementation funds for that grant, were to employ treatment and recovery navigators in the community, and a portion of one of the positions was going to be dedicated 100% to working with law enforcement. Sadly, we didn't get that grant, and it was, you know, we did submit it right after COVID hit, and it, you know, needed a lot more work before we could be awarded. That being said, there's still a consortium in the community. We actually had Lieutenant Weatherby at the time, who was part of our consortium. But it's just to say that we've identified, the work has been going on. I mean, we started with the planning grant, that was like 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago. So the need is identified, and I think that's where hopefully this team will be able to seek opportunities for those kind of partnerships. And of course, my passion is with the substance use disorder. How can we better, just like Winnie said, how can we better support individuals that if there is an episode that happens as a result of their use, how can we intervene and get them connected to treatment as quickly as possible? That being said, I also know that it's important for the crisis workers to have the aid of law enforcement. So not necessarily have the individual struggling maybe having them see an officer in uniform is not going to help the situation. However, I still feel like there's an important role for an officer to be close by in the event that it's an unsafe situation. So that's where that partnership, and this is, again, just my opinion, but I feel like that partnership is very important to have both the safety and the protection for the crisis or substance use worker to go to that situation until it's deemed safe. So just a thought that was going through my mind of needing both.
I have a question. Sorry, Jamie, because I think you're going to talk. Is there any data around, or is there any way, it doesn't need to be hard data, around where you feel like there's inappropriate situations where police are called? I just feel like from my experience, sometimes I get frustrated with the mental health system and working with children. If there's behavioral issues and there's like a crisis plan with the family, we'll often say, like, someone will tell them, the family, oh, you need to call the police if your kid becomes escalated, and 8 times out of 10, that's not really the most effective strategy. So that's just, that's something from my perspective I'd like to see change, or look at a systems issue around that. So I didn't know if there were other issues. I mean, we have limited resources around law enforcement. So do you feel like there are scenarios in which this group, again, looking at resources, we can help shift and change that so that there's more law enforcement resources that can be used appropriately? I'm just curious, and I don't know if that made sense.
Are you asking me?
I'm just going to agree with you, Danielle. I think, yeah, there are lots. I think there are lots of things that we can look at that will be other resources that can work hand in hand with law enforcement or be used instead of law enforcement.
But it's difficult because I agree with that 100%. But we are called a lot for out of control kids under 10 because other agencies will not go hands-on to even put them in cars, get them out of cars, and we'll go there. I give you an example of one that happened a month ago where 5 people from an agency were dealing with a 5-year-old and couldn't get them to get out of a car. And after 2 hours of dealing with this, they called us and asked us to remove them from a car as the police. And that shouldn't be what we're doing. That should have nothing to do with the police. But this went on for 2 hours in a parking lot of a state agency, and they called us to go remove a 5-year-old from a car. So as much as I hear all the time, or we hear that people want less police interaction, there's agencies out there that will not remove a 5-year-old from a car.
I wonder too if that's an opportunity, as we're kind of doing our analysis, is to look at, like, my experience has been, I facilitate a lot of system meetings in our community, and in the kid world, I don't find police involvement are at the table as much. And so again, that's kind of where I talk about the prevention kind of upstream of how do we do that. So I just wonder if I can be mindful of that, if there would be opportunities where maybe law enforcement can be involved, and that those are the policy or system issues that we can talk about, that it's just not really appropriate.
I would love to talk about that, because that is an ongoing discussion within our office and other agencies a lot, that we should not be used in those circumstances at all.
So just hearing some of this and being mindful that we've got about 5 minutes left in this discussion area, but just I'm wondering if there's anything that we could be educated on what resources are currently being leveraged by the police or in other agencies in partnership with the police. Because I know, Chris, I didn't know really any of the things that you were talking about beforehand. I didn't know that there was going to be an additional embedded social worker. And so just trying to, maybe before we can do a gap analysis, probably understand what the whole universe is, and then figure out I know you know where the gaps are, Mo, but just from our perspective and where we can influence policy and procedure change in the community level to help support or fill those gaps. But I don't even know what all the resources are that you have currently, and then where the gaps are from there.
Well, we're we can always do more with my whole thing is bring as many people as you can to any table, or more than one table if need be. But we're meeting Monday to strengthen our relationship with restorative justice. That's a huge partnership that we've had a partnership, but we need to build that stronger. We need to utilize them more. So Monday is a meeting with, there with them. But again, that's going to be growing. We tried to strengthen that more since I've gotten in this position, more or less in this position since July. That's going to be a big help. But there's always agencies out there. But the biggest ones are NCSS. That's huge. Voices Against Violence, with having Sean there, is huge. And with the Phoenix House and with Melinda in general, but Melinda and now the Phoenix House is huge. Those are our biggest ones: mental health, substance abuse, restorative justice. I see those as the biggest ones. And then we need to have allies in DCF, we need to have allies in Voices Against Violence. But we need to start Samaritan House, all of those. But the biggest ones, I think, are mental health and substance abuse.
Yep.
Those are our things.
That makes me think too, Chief Mo, about historically we had the Thrive Impanelment. So that was the law enforcement impanelment that was created with the 5 local law enforcement agencies. And then right when you were saying the relationship with DCF, that was a great opportunity for those relationships to build too. So that was an initiative that sadly kind of had a pause button pushed when COVID hit and the Hope and Recovery closed down. And that being said, we've got the green light with Phoenix to revive it sooner than later. So that is something that I think will be extremely helpful with this group, as well as in our community, to get the right people to the table, because on that list to the commissioner of the partners involved, it listed everyone that you just said and then some. So I think that this just reminds me how much more I ought to prioritize it now that I'm getting more comfortable in my role at Phoenix House.
Yeah, it's just difficult. I mean, the thing is, none of us, or at least I can say again, I'm not an expert in anything. The goal of any of these should be to bring the experts to the table. You can only retain so much knowledge and so much expertise. Bring everybody else and let them bring in what they know and put them together. That's all we need to do. It's not rocket science, right?
Any other comments in our last couple of minutes?
I'd like to go back to what Danielle was saying about data collection. I would love to see page 2 of the roadmap, number 6, transparency, all of that information as soon as possible, because it looks fundamental to me. I think if we're going to start to look in specific directions or build concrete approaches, having the data that's listed there would be a really obvious place to start.
Thank you, Tom.
So I guess what I would say on that is, if you as a panel or as a group send me within like 2 weeks before the next meeting what you would like for data, I can definitely get it. Or if I can't get it, I can tell you why I can't get it. But for the most part, I can extrapolate anything. Anything that's been captured anyway.
Thank you so much. Okay, yeah, and I see a note in the comment. We're opening for public comment in approximately 1.5 minutes.
Melinda, do you want me to step off of that so people can speak freely, or how are you looking at for that?
That would be appreciated. Thank you so much. I appreciate you attending tonight and everything you shared with us, and you'll hear from me in the near future. We'll start working on the Thrive Impanelment again.
I live there, so let me know.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, have a good night, everybody.
Have a good night.
See ya. Bye-bye.
Okay. All right, so yeah, let's move into our next agenda item, which is opening the floor for public comment. And there weren't any new topics suggested in the beginning, but we definitely have some hands raised. So I'm excited to let you all share. I see 2. I'm going to go with Rear only because I believe it was his hand that was raised in the beginning of the meeting. So why don't you go ahead?
Thank you. My name is Ryer Erickson. I'm one of the people who is kind of responsible for having the city start this board. I'm pretty disturbed by some of what I heard today. One, that you guys are thinking of adding someone as a person to sit on the board who isn't a board member. As the board was set up, it was set up as not having discussions about individual cases. and not talking about that, which is pretty clear, which was actually a problem for me and one of the reasons I decided not to join. That's disturbing. Another disturbing thing is to hear you talk about community policing and then use military phrases like boots on the ground. That's a weird decision to make if you're talking about community policing. And while we're on the subject of community policing, data clearly shows that community policing actually increases the likelihood of people being put in jail, being arrested, being abused by the system and by policing. Community policing is not something that the 21st century of policing suggests is good. All the data points against that kind of policing. Having police walk around neighborhoods is not a good thing. It doesn't protect people. All it does is add police to the system. So I just want to say, there was a reason I decided not to join this board. And one of it is because it's comes out very clear that this isn't a board that's interested in actually critiquing and fixing the system. It feels like you're more interested in just working with the system you have now and not actually making changes. And I think I'd really like you all to think about this system, the way the policing system is now, the way a handcuffed woman was punched in the face by a police officer, the way a student, a child, was abused and called the R word, a word that's a slur for a disabled child, was called that in school. That police officer is still on the force, is still working, is walking around the streets, and we're expected to trust the police. There hasn't been repair done for us to trust the police. So what I'd really like to suggest is you work on building the trust back, repairing the broken trust, and working on that before you decide that we're just gonna have people trust the police. That isn't happening right now. No one trusts the police. I mean, some people trust the police. I don't trust the police. I don't want the police in my yard. I don't want the police in my life. I don't call the police when there's domestic disputes in my neighborhood because I know what that means. I know that means that someone's gonna get hurt. So instead of focusing on the services, what I really think you guys need to start doing is focusing on the ways in which you're gonna rebuild the broken trust that the police have created in this community. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. And the next hand that I had seen up was Kate's.
Yeah. Hi. Wow, Ryer, thank you. Congratulations, everyone, on your appointment, and thank you for your service. I encourage each of you to access the videos and watch the public comment from city council meetings between last spring and now to get a better understanding as to why this board was created and the pain that it was supposed to be responding to. In its current state, this board is not responding to that pain. It is not acknowledging the front and center role white supremacy plays in our policing and justice systems and the power dynamic imbalances. But it can if you take your role seriously in responding to that pain. This isn't an attaboy board for the police. It's a board for the community. The status quo is clearly not working. Look at where we are this year, this week. You can politely sweep this under the rug of the local data that you're being hand given or the biased guidance that MRI, an all white middle-aged police group gives you, and under the guise of civility and community policing. Chances are beyond great that you actually will do that, but you don't have to. This board can be so much more than what I've heard here tonight. I hope people will have the courage to be the community representatives that we need at this moment. Thank you.
Wow, thank you.
Thank you so much, Kate. And the next hand that I see is Reese.
Hi everyone, my name is Reese Kelly. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I live in the city of St. Albans. Like Ryer, I have been one of the community members who are part of city council discussions that really pushed for this board to be into place. And I want to name that, you know, the community pressure around the creation of this board is that there are ongoing concerns about the inequitable and negative experiences that people of color, women, and people with disabilities in our community are having with the police. This is not a neutral situation. This is something that is about the disproportionate inequitable experiences. It also was pushed to have this board because the experience of over-policing we have in this city, where police are being where they are not needed, they're escalating the situation, and then they are bringing kids and community members into the criminal justice system because they are there where they are actually not needed. We also have an issue with the lack of accountability for SAPD's history of abusive police officers, as has already been mentioned. So as Kate said, please review those tapes if you can. There is a very specific reason as to why community members were asking for this kind of accountability board, not something that is about, again, working hand in hand. That doesn't mean that the SAPD does not need to be a part of this and invested in it, but it is your job and the hope through the community that you are holding them to the highest standards possible. Now, how to do that, the questions that I have that I would really hope that you would bring to the SAPD is for the transformation roadmap. What are the benchmarks for each point that's laid out? How will they know that they've achieved transformation? How will they know that they've reached milestones on the path? That's something that's not even stated or clarified on that document. What do they actually mean? How will we know? What does it look like? Something that's been brought up today that I think is also worth asking is, what is the data that police are tracking now? How are they tracking it? How easily is it to look through? What is publicly available or not? I'm sure a lot of that data is publicly available, so you don't even have to be circulating it in private. What data does your board want and need that they are not tracking that you need to ask them to initiate as soon as possible? If you're looking at inequitable treatment and they're not actually documenting that kind of treatment, you got to ask, or we're not going to know, or you're going to get months down the line and have questions that they're not able to answer or that they can obfuscate. The last thing that I will point is that I think it's important for the chief to actually address issues of the budget. This is absolutely about resources and aligning them with that goals of the transformation roadmap and with addressing the issues of the inequities. Where is the money being allocated to? How is it addressing the needs of the community? How does it compare to comparable cities and towns? We don't have to look at ourselves as a snowflake in isolation. We should be looking and taking a comparative analysis as to how we are prioritizing and what we're spending our resources on compared to other cities of our size, of our demographic makeup. Thank you very much for listening. I really wish you all the best, and I will be in this with you. So thank you.
Thank you, Reese. I agree with a lot of what you said about the data elements, and so we'll make sure that that gets on our list for our ask for chief for the next cycle.
Yeah, I also wanted to say thank you so much. We still have a little bit more time.
I want to say thank you to all the comments, because, you know, unless you feel that pain, there is words that you will hear and it's just like, you know, oh, but when you feel that pain, you know, if I, as a Black woman, get pulled over, I hold my steering wheel for dead. I don't move my hands. I ask the officer, can I move my hands? We don't have that opportunity to use the glove box. You ask we always have it over our head. If they ask this right over your head, reach into the glove box to get you killed. Okay? And there's stuff that's being pushed under the rug that needs to come out in the open, period. Because we are not squeaky clean, and it's not this lullaby. If it's a lullaby, I need to get off the board because I don't need a lullaby. I do that by myself. So I agree with the comments that we got from these people that were listening tonight. If we are going to have this board, it has to be an action board. And again, View Pine Lake, same situation. It's a documentary that's happening in Atlanta, in a same situation like us, and how they've turned it around. And please write that down, Pine Lake. Mike McCarthy looked at this and had asked a few other people in St. Albans to look at it. I was in tears when they were speaking. It's like the words that I said, but the thoughts that I have, but then put the words the way they put it. But I was glad that those two people brought it crystal clear as to what it's supposed to look like, what it's supposed to sound like. It's not the same old, same old. We're done with that. Period.
Thank you so much, Winnie.
You're welcome.
I'll point people to the chat. I also see a comment in there from Tanner McEwen. Thank you for that, Tanner. Says, just to add, there is a number of data resources that have been compiled already. If you visit https://stanelb.org IGHBORS.org. So saintneighbors.org.
Oh.
We still have a few more minutes if anybody else would like to share. Okay, well, in the interest of not holding up any longer, I more than anything want to thank every single person that joined this meeting. I think it's essential, as I said before, to hear everyone's voice. I'm so grateful to be part of this team and know that we'll be communicating, and we do have some action items, which I'm extremely excited about for that, because I also agree, I loved Winnie's passion about we need to be a working board, and I shared with Jamie before the meeting that I am not a fan of going to meetings just to talk. It's about action. So I'm so appreciative to each and every single person that showed up tonight. We will be having our next Police Advisory Board meeting. The second Friday of each month is the time that we've chosen for it. So that would be February 12th. And it'll also be at the same time at 5 o'clock. Moving forward, we won't necessarily keep an hour-and-a-half time slot. The goal would be to go to an hour, but at least for the first couple of meetings, it felt important to give a little bit of extra time. And that's a question I would like to ask this board before we close, is what your feelings are for meeting length in our second meeting in the month of February. If you would like to see us continue with the hour-and-a-half, or if you would like to go to the hour, now that we no longer need to have introductions as a piece of it.
I'd like to see an hour-and-a-half.
Yeah,
I would
agree.
too. I think we have a lot to talk about.
Perfect.
I agree.
I'm excited. I was hoping that's what you'd say. Okay, wonderful. So, and public comment at the beginning of the agenda, as it is in other meetings. So yeah, so Reese, what we're doing is in the beginning of the meetings, we have a few minutes dedicated to any additions to public comment, or to the agenda, sorry. And then at the end of the agenda, that's where we would add those new items for public comment. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, and I think that question that had come from Reese. So yeah, Reese, in the beginning of each agenda, we're going to open for approximately 10 minutes. So open to the public and anyone to add agenda items. And again, the actual portion of the public comment will be just as it was today at the end of the meeting. So anything added at the beginning, if you have a specific topic that you wanted to come with to the next meeting, if you introduce it in that first portion, then we would go more in depth at the end of the meeting. And that being said, we didn't get any additions today, but we still opened it up for sharing at the end. And that's something we will do moving forward to make sure everybody has an opportunity to have their voice heard. Okay, I just saw your comments. So, okay, great. Okay. Well, again, I want to thank everybody for attending. We will see you next month, and we'll adjourn from this meeting. Have a wonderful evening, and looking forward to some intense, awesome work to make our community better. Thank you, everyone.
You're welcome. Good
Thank
night,
you.
guys.
Night.